Spins, hands to Chubb. Runs up the middle, breaks a tackle at the 10, the 5. On the hash mark. Touchdown, Nick Chubb. That may be the nail in the coffin. His second touchdown on the ground tonight.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
All right, welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry. I am Jay Croucher.
Hey.
Welcome back from Buffalo.
Thank you.
Matthew Berry. It's
Thank
good to have
very
you back.
much. It's good to be back. Good to be seen.
How was your Halloween?
Better than the Browns.
Yeah.
Better than the Bengals, I should say. The Browns had a great Halloween. Better than the Bengals, I should say. My Halloween was great, honestly.
You're a big Halloween guy?
You know what? I'm not, but
Okay.
I'm a big kids guy. You know, I love my kids, and my kids love Halloween. So therefore, yeah. So I was there all day in Buffalo on Sunday. Did fantasy football pregame with you, and then we watched the games. Then I did Football Night in America. Then I did the postgame show, Sunday night postgame show on Peacock, and so probably didn't get back to my hotel by like 2 a.m.
Right.
On a 7 a.m. You know, finally try to fall asleep, get back 7 a.m. flight to try to get back to make sure I could take my kids trick or treating last night. We did in fact trick or treat last night, and we didn't just hit my neighborhood. I don't know how you feel about this. I wasn't sure about this, but you know,
played an away
for
game.
kids. What?
You play an away game?
Yeah, my kids want to go to other neighborhoods.
Okay.
My friend said to come to this neighborhood. My friend said, well, you know, my daughter's just turned 11.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many more years I have of them wanting me to take them around. So anyway, I think we hit like every neighborhood. Well, you hit like three or four different neighborhoods.
How many hours?
We did we did a little over 2 hours, 2.5 hours, that's a long time here. And you see here's a picture of me and my kids, and look at
the candy.
both my daughters they went as cowgirls, obviously, and they are both leaning their bags of candy on my shoulder. Those are pillowcases. I just like it's so there you go. Those are my daughters right there.
It's a hard night's
and
work.
like it's like I mean like I don't know. I literally think every piece of candy in the Eastern Seaboard are in those two bags. It was unbelievable. How about you? You have a good Halloween?
I had a great Halloween. Yeah, it's one of the best things about being in America is we get Halloween. We don't do it in Australia. It's a big miss by Australia. But
did you dress up as a kangaroo?
No, I didn't. I originally was going to go as Barney, the dinosaur, but my 2-year-old, she saw that the 4-year-old was wearing an Elsa from Frozen dress.
Sure.
Thus, binned Barney, whole big thing. Barney
you could have gone as Sven.
Yeah, could have gone as Sven. So this is what. So
could have gone as Kristoff.
Yeah. In the end, like you, I didn't dress up. I'm wearing a Minnesota Timberwolves hoodie there. So yeah, that's the scariest it gets. The Minnesota Timberwolves slightly underperforming defense through 7 games in the NBA. But yeah, a bit of Elsa from Frozen. Baby Rio went as a skeleton, and yeah, it was good. It's a really good part of America, Halloween. Yeah, it's one of the most fun things.
And you clearly just moved into your house. You guys are still, still sparse there.
Yeah.
But you did find time to. All right, that's good.
Yeah,
that's fine.
It was fun. Now, speaking of
how many
sparse,
times have you seen Frozen, by the way?
Like 278.
I mean, like, when you were the father of daughters,
yes,
at some point you will go through a Frozen phase.
It's been ongoing for what feels like 2 years now.
I mean, I had that phase for many years. Jay, do you want to build a snowman?
Yeah, I'm not afraid of the cold anymore.
No, nor should you be.
Someone who is afraid of the cold, apparently, Joe Burrow, afraid of the Cleveland Browns pass rushing cold because he got wrecked last night.
Dude.
Let's get into some Monday night takeaways, and I think the big one is that offensive line in Cincinnati just is not fixed at all. Looked like it might have been, and just a disaster all around fantasy-wise for the Bengals.
He was under pressure constantly, 25% of his dropbacks versus the Browns, and honestly it should have been more, but he just kept dumping it off very, very quickly, which is one of the reasons why Joe Mixon had more targets than rush attempts in this game. And it didn't feel like it was designed. And I think people are going to look at this game, or if they look at the box score, they'll be like, oh, they really missed Jamar Chase. And make no mistake, not having Jamar Chase hurts, but honestly, not having an offensive line hurts. I mean, they're not going to face a defensive line as good as the Browns every game. Next week, they are on a bye, so they have some time to regroup, and then they're at Miami, at Buffalo, home to Tampa Bay. But it's not like it's suddenly easy. The Bills obviously have an amazing defensive line. The Buccaneers, that's one of the few things that's going right for Tampa Bay. Miami's no slouch. So the Bengals got to get this fixed and quick over the bye week because Joe Burrow was constantly under pressure, and as a result, his plays weren't getting down plays weren't developing downfield. It was really a weird one here, as you see on your screen, in terms of who the top receivers were. Now, T. Higgins, 3 for 49 on a touchdown on 6 targets. He basically bails you out with a junk time touchdown, Jay.
Yeah, he did. Hayden Hurst delivered. He goes over. That was Connor's prop yesterday.
Nice.
Goes 4 for 42. Tyler Boyd, 38 yards, only 3 receptions, but again, does get the touchdown, which helps salvage it a little bit. Joe Mixon, maybe the biggest disappointment of all, thought that he would run rampant over that Cleveland Browns rushing defense, which has been terrible all year, but he did nothing. Though he did get involved a little bit in the passing game, but again, those were dump-offs because Burrow had no time. I don't think Jamar Chase would have mattered last night because he's not getting open deep in 2.1 seconds.
I don't think he would. By the way, I'm a moron. This is what happens when you travel all day and then you immediately get off the plane and then you take your daughter's trick-or-treating and then you steal her candy and you're on a sugar high. So I completely messed that up. The Browns are on a bye. No, the Bengals, I apologize, just to clean this up. The Bengals actually are home to Carolina, right, which in theory...
The frisky Carolina Panthers.
They are certainly frisky. And then they have a bye. Then they're at the Steelers, at Tennessee. So it's an easier schedule for them. The schedule I read before, that's actually the Browns. I mixed that up in my head. That's my mistake. And I would love to throw somebody under the bus, but honestly, it's entirely me. That one's all on me. I'm a moron. It is what it is. If this is not your first time watching the show, you're well aware of that anyway. So anyway, the Bengals still got to get regardless of who they're playing, they still have to fix this offensive line, Jay, because it hasn't really helped any of them. If there was anything positive here, it was that we did see more of Tyler Boyd. We thought his role would increase with Jamar Chase out, and it did. He ran around on 76% of his snaps. He was second in targets among the Bengals wide receivers, which is what we expected here as well. He got a touchdown in this one, 3 for 38. Again, the whole offense was just sort of bad in this one, but I think to the extent you can be encouraged by anything from last night out of the Bengals, I think you have to be encouraged by Tyler Boyd's usage in the absence of Jamar Chase.
Yep. Let's talk about Joe Burrow, who did not have a great game naturally with the context. He goes 232 yards, 2 touchdowns. He does get that to salvage it a little bit late, but throws the pick, loses a fumble. Is there concern about Joe Burrow behind this offensive line, particularly these next few weeks without Jamar Chase?
You know what? It's less concern and more of an eyebrow raise. I mean, you just see here, right as you're watching the footage here. I mean, he's got no time to throw. He's got no time to throw. He's doing the Thriller right there, right? So anyway, I mean, he's constantly under pressure, not getting any kind of protection. They're going to have to clean that up. The Browns had a good defensive game plan for him. Give credit where credit is due. They did a lot of stunts, a lot of blitzes. Sometimes they were able to get pressure with 4. They mixed up their looks quite a bit in this one as well. Here's what I will say about Joe Burrow, though, right? And it was ugly, right? 150 yards in the first 3 quarters. Again, he sort of padded his stats in the fourth time and sort of junk time, but this is his fewest fantasy points in a game this season. If he doesn't do it at home against Carolina, I'm like, okay, whatever. You know what I mean? But Marcus Mariota had a field day against them last week. I'm willing to give it 1 week. I'm not panicking yet. Eyebrow is raised. But no, I'm still starting Joe Burrow against Carolina next week.
It's not like he had a great offensive line last year. It was arguably even worse in terms of personnel, and he was still able to do what he did in the second half of the season. Now, he did lead the league in sacks last year. I think a lot of them were on him. Last night was not on him.
No.
He was just Myles Garrett, and he's not going to have to face Myles Garrett every week, who is maybe the best pass rusher in the league, but certainly some concerns and a bit more uncertainty around Burrow's performance than coming into last night. Yeah,
I mean, look, T. Higgins, wide receiver 23, ends week 8 as wide receiver 23. Tyler Boyd ends the week as wide receiver 28. None of that's ideal, but you're in a game in which the Bengals couldn't really move the ball at all for, the first 3 quarters and then a little bit of junk time, for them both to finish as top 30 wide receivers, you'll sort of take that.
Yeah.
Both obviously helped by their touchdowns, but the fact of the matter is that, touchdowns count. I think better days are ahead for the entire Bengals passing offense against the Carolina Panthers. Joe Mixon is a...
What are you going to say here? Choose words carefully.
He's you know what he is? He's a fancier Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah.
He's a touchdown-dependent, volume-dependent RB2 is what he is. So Joe Mixon in this one, he winds up as running back 24 for the week. For the season, on a fantasy points per game basis, he's running back 17. The volume has been there. The efficiency in the scoring has not, Jay. And nothing we saw from last night makes you feel like, oh, yeah, that's definitely coming.
Yeah, we're 2 months into the season now. You can't write this off as a small sample through 3 weeks or anything. Like, this is just Joe Mixon's reality at the moment. The offensive line just isn't good enough. The scheme isn't getting him open. His value is really going to come from these dump-offs because of how bad the offensive line is. You don't like that. But let's...
And by the way, I mean, like, so Carolina bye, at Pittsburgh, at Tennessee, you know, like there's no defense on there that truly scares you, but there's also no defense on there you're like, oh, that's
Titans in particular have a really good rushing defense. I think.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that over the last 4 weeks, the Titans are the number one defense in the NFL. Carolina's actually the 13th best run defense over the last 4 weeks. Like, they've actually played, you know, kind of plucky here, and look, whatever, the Steelers are bad, but maybe by the time they play Cincinnati, they get a little help. They get a little healthier, you know, and maybe Watt is back, and so
it's a Jonathan Taylor situation where you obviously have to start Jonathan Taylor, you have to start Joe Mixon every single week, but certainly you're not feeling great about it. Now let's flick over to Cleveland and talk about some better things like Amari Cooper, but first let's hear from Amari Cooper talking about his one bad moment on the night.
What happened on that throw?
It was an abomination, really. It just kept running through my mind, like, okay, if he's not open, throw it away. I didn't really realize how hard it was to throw the ball away, because that's what I tried to do. Like, I did not try to throw it to him, but I was trying to get the ball back to the line of scrimmage, and I looked up. It was another guy's hands. It was terrible, man. Yeah, don't have me throwing too many more passes out there.
Jacoby said it's already out of the playbook.
Oh, yeah. I'm just going to stick to getting open, you know. That's it.
There you go. I'm just going to stick to getting open. Well, he did that early and often
here it is, Amari.
last night.
Oh,
Here's
under
the
pressure.
pass.
Oh, no.
He's under pressure. Oh,
wow.
He throws a pick.
Is that Amari Cooper or Zach Wilson out there?
Yeah, oh, man. Wow.
Yeah, Amari
Shots
Cooper
fired.
just owning it.
Meanwhile, here's Jacoby Brissett finding Amari Cooper wide open.
That's more like it.
This is more like it. This is more what we've seen quite a bit. We're familiar with this,
touchdown.
as are the fans in Cleveland, because when he's at home in Cleveland, Amari Cooper is the greatest wide receiver of all time.
Yeah, it's Cooper, Bryce, Moss.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable.
This is the
here
one,
he is.
though.
He just,
What a catch.
Just unbelievable catch. He beats two guys downfield.
To ice the game.
To just absolutely ice the game. Great catch, kind of by a shoestring catch there down the field. The fact of the matter is you see it here on your screen, the home road splits are remarkable. It's throughout his career, but even more stark this year. When he's at home this year, he's averaging over 90 receiving yards a game, over 6 receptions a game. He's got 5 touchdowns he's got 5 touchdowns at home, and he's averaging over 21 fantasy points per game. Then on the road, he has not scored. He's averaging under 35 receptions a game, under 35 receiving yards a game, under 3 receptions a game, and 5.7 fantasy points per game is what he averages on the road. Now, worth noting, his next 3 games, I'm getting the schedule right, bye, at Miami, at Buffalo.
Yeah.
The NFL trade deadline is 4 o'clock today. The fantasy trade line is still a few weeks away. But given how stark the home road splits are, and given the fact that you're not going to be able to, you shouldn't use him. You're probably still going to have to roll him out there. But I'm just sitting here. If somebody's not really aware of the home road splits, they're off the Monday night game. It's an island game. Everyone's watching. He made a bunch of big plays here. Are you selling high on Amari Cooper? Because I am.
Yeah.
If I'm sitting here, as we head into week 9, if I'm 4-4, you know, like, and I'm sitting here, I'm 3-5, and I'm like, look, I got to win. There's a couple of teams that are really dominating. I can't screw around for the playoffs. Like, I need to win the next 3 weeks. I need to go at least 2-1 over the next 3 weeks. I think Amari Cooper, who isn't really going to be usable until the Tampa Bay game, and you still don't even love that matchup, right? Because their secondary will be healthy by then. I don't know.
I agree, and I think the thing with Cooper has always been that Deshaun Watson is coming. He's coming for the back half, for the fantasy playoffs. He's going to be there, and it's going to get better. Well, I don't think it is going to get better, because how much better can it get than it is right now with Jacoby Brissett? I don't think for him that's going to mean a meaningful uptick. And then when you look at the road games upcoming, I would try and sell high on Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not just giving him away, but he's, on the season, Amari Cooper is the 8th best wide receiver in fantasy. He's wide receiver 16 on a points per game basis. He's been healthy, which has helped him as well. So for me, yeah, I mean, try to sell him as a top 10 wide receiver. Again, he's wide receiver 8 on the season. If I could get something that would help me over the next 3 weeks, in a big way, I'm absolutely selling Amari Cooper here as well. The other thing that I think is interesting, Jay, is that, we think about Deshaun Watson, and everyone thinks, oh, Deshaun Watson's going to be awesome. Just imagine if he's doing this with Jacoby Brissett, imagine when he gets Deshaun Watson. We have no idea what Deshaun Watson's going to play like.
He looked terrible in the preseason.
Terrible. Yeah. And he hasn't played real football in over 2 years now. Yeah. And by the way, if you look at this Bengals schedule, I'm sorry, if you look at the Brown, I keep screwing this up. Whatever. 2 Cincinnati teams, 2 Ohio teams, 2 Orange teams. They're both orange and from Ohio. All right, it is what it is. If you look at the Browns' upcoming schedule, once Deshaun Watson gets back, it's a bunch of division games. There's the game with the Steelers. There's a game with the Bengals. There's a game with the Ravens. His first game back is against the Texans, a pluckier than they've been given credit for defense, Texans. But that's a pretty easy matchup. But then after that, it gets pretty tough if you start looking at the schedule here. So I'm not convinced. I think in the grand scheme of things, obviously Watson's a better quarterback than Jacoby Brissett, but I'm not convinced he will absolutely be this massive upgrade over Jacoby Brissett for this year for Amari Cooper.
Yep, I agree with that.
But if I'm trying to sell Amari Cooper, I can sell that dream.
Yes.
Hey, look,
put it in the deck. Deshaun Watson's
coming. He's been awesome so far. Deshaun Watson's coming. Let's go. So, all right. The only other thing I would say about this game here, whatever. Nick Chubb is a superstar here. We're going to talk about Donovan Peoples-Jones, 4 for 81, yet another game over 70 yards for DPJ. So we'll talk about him coming up in waivers with wide receivers here. But we finally saw D'Ernest Johnson in this game.
Yeah.
And I think the reason is because it's been well rumored, Kareem Hunt is on the block. He potentially could get traded. He didn't do much in this game, 72 total yards on 15 touches. He didn't end up getting into the end zone. But again, D'Ernest Johnson could get that role if Kareem Hunt goes somewhere. Kareem Hunt looked to me like Kareem Hunt.
Yep.
And so we'll see if he ends up getting dealt.
Yep. I think that the fact that the Browns won last night, I think that's going to hurt the chances that Kareem Hunt gets moved, because if they went to 2-6, then the season's over, then you're selling off. At the same time, maybe they move him anyway because you've got D'Ernest Johnson there, and Nick Chubb is always going to be the guy.
And, by the way, Kareem Hunt is a free agent at the end of the season.
Yep.
As a thought, hey, listen, yes, okay, we won, but it's probably not our year. And even so, we could get some picks or something for Kareem Hunt. We're not going to give him away, but because they'd get a compensatory pick if he goes in somewhere else in the offseason. But still, if you can beat a compensatory pick, why not? Because we're probably not going to re-sign him in the offseason.
Yep. Kind of like the Browns 50-1 to win the AFC now. They just have so much upside because of Deshaun, who might be bad, but he might come back and he might be good, and they have so much talent around him. But you don't believe in that. Just like you didn't believe in my Atlanta Falcons at 12-1 to make the playoffs.
That one's looking like a much better bet. I don't know. The Browns are too.
There's too much weirdness.
There's too much. There are too many of the
bottom
Browns.
of the AFC playoff
picture.
But
for whatever it's worth, to win the AFC, to make the AFC playoffs,
to win the AFC, they've got so much talent.
Here's what's weird: is to win the AFC, the entire AFC.
Yeah.
To represent
You've got to beat the Buffalo Bills at some point,
right.
probably.
To me, 50-1 is actually bad odds.
50-1?
To win the AFC, to beat the Bills.
Deshaun Watson was the third best quarterback in the NFL last time we saw him.
Dude, I get it, but you're asking these guys to beat the Bills and the Chiefs, and it's only 50-1. The Browns are 3-6. Or 3-5, I should say. They're 3-5, and it's only 50-1 to win to go to the Super Bowl as the AFC champion.
Yeah.
No, I think those are terrible odds.
Okay, you're off.
I'm out on that bet.
I'll ride with the Cleveland Browns. Now let's talk about some running backs on the waiver wire.
And we should note, we are in another Buymageddon. This is another Buymageddon. Here's some of the running backs we'll be missing this week from action: Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, Christian McCaffrey, Nick Chubb, the aforementioned Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. To the extent you've been using him, Melvin Gordon and Latavius Murray. Saquon Barkley is out. Najee Harris is out. It's a lot of big-name running backs that may not be here. We don't know yet about Gus Edwards. John Harbaugh saying, It looks like a mild hamstring injury, but are they ever mild? Who knows, in terms of Gus Edwards as well. So there's a chance that that you need a running back this week. So we have some. And I would divide this into sort of two categories. Do you need a running back this week, or are you, as you enter week 9, are you 5-3? Are you 6-2? Are you looking more towards the future, or are you like, I just need a warm body this week?
Yeah, well, not necessarily a great matchup for this week, but potentially going forward is Kyren Williams, running back on the Rams, who plays at Tampa Bay. He's available in 55% of Yahoo leagues. Now, you gave it out early on Twitter that Ronnie Rivers was going to get extended run, and he did. He didn't produce, but he did get the run. Is Kyren Williams a guy that you think should be owned everywhere?
I certainly think he should be. The buzz, first off, to your point, no Rams running back has performed. We will see, like Cam Akers might be back in the mix if he doesn't get dealt as well. Obviously, Henderson got out-touched by my Ronnie Rivers, but Ronnie Rivers didn't do much with the opportunity here. They play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week, and so Kyren Williams, who has been on the IR since the start of the season, but they love him, and he's available more than 50% of Yahoo leagues, has a chance to play this week, right? Last Wednesday, his 21-day activation window started, and so Kyren Williams has a shot to play against Tampa Bay. And the Buccaneers, which we thought coming into the season would be one of the best run defenses in the NFL, has just been absolutely dominated, right? They've given up 373 scrimmage yards to running backs over the last 2 games. They are last in terms of running back rush yards allowed. They're 28th in running back receiving yards allowed. And so whoever's the starting running back against the Bucs this week, I think is certainly flex viable. Maybe it'll be Ronnie Rivers, but we're hoping it's Kyren Williams. And if it's not Kyren Williams this week, it will be sooner rather than later. I definitely think he's worth a stash. They love him with a capital L in L.A.
Yep, no, I like that. Now let's go to another rookie running back who's certainly gotten some buzz in Isiah Pacheco, and also his running mate, Jerick McKinnon. Pacheco's available in 66% of leagues, McKinnon 93%. They play the Titans on Sunday night, and the Titans actually sneakily, now they have the #1 rushing defense in the league by DVOA, so not the best matchup. At the same time, the Chiefs are massive favorites in that game. So what do you like in that running back situation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't love anything. I think it's still going to continue to be the sort of the hot hand approach, though it's worth noting that Isiah Pacheco seemed to get more run last week. Now, a lot of it came with a game out of hand. The last time the Chiefs played, right? They were on a bye this past week. But when we saw them against San Francisco in Week 7, he had the 8 carries for 43 yards, but just a 30% snap rate, and a lot of his production came after the game was out of hand. Having said that, right, in every game that he's had at least 8 carries, he's averaged over 5 yards per carry. He's looked the more effective running back to the eye test than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I know they prefer McKinnon in a passing role. I think it's still going to be a hot hand approach, but to your point, they might be blowing out Tennessee in the second half. Then they play the Jags, the Chargers, and the Rams as well. So in a deeper league, just because there's a chance that Pacheco emerges as the guy for Kansas City, and if that were to happen, you'd want him. But right now, it feels like a committee. It just sort of gives you an idea of kind of like, we're not sifting through a ton here. It's a little bit bleak in the running back. I will say for deeper leagues, I do like Jerick McKinnon. He's led the Chiefs' backfield in snaps 3 straight games. He's had over 45 yards from scrimmage in 2 out of 3. So in deeper PPR leagues, McKinnon might be a viable flex. I mean, again, he's running back 55 in fantasy points per game. I mean, you have to be digging pretty deep here on McKinnon.
Yeah,
but I like the player.
Yes. I do too. I think with Isiah Pacheco for this week, if you're looking for fantasy value, you're going to need him to put up like 10 points in the fourth quarter when they're up by 20. Just quickly while we're on Tennessee, and this guy won't be available in any league, but Derrick Henry is 30-1 to win Offensive Player of the Year. Derrick Henry just had 219 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's basically the joint favorite to lead the league in rushing. He's the entire identity of that offense. He's on pace for almost 2,000 yards. He's going to get more than 15 touchdowns.
But isn't that usually a quarterback win?
No,
an award?
It doesn't. Offensive Player of the Year goes skill position the past 3 years it has. Now it's become an award where it's like, who's the best non-quarterback? Because MVP is a quarterback award. It just goes quarterback every time. So past 3 years, it's been Cooper Kupp, it's been Derrick Henry, Michael Thomas. And I think right now he is the best running back with how he's playing. And if it goes running back or receiver, I think Derrick Henry's a huge chance. 30 to 1.
30 to 1.
Do you like that more than the Browns AFC?
I definitely like that bet more. BetMGM use the promo code Barry when you go there to make that bet. 30 to 1 on Derrick Henry, Offensive Player of the Year. Rachaad White is sort of interesting as we talk about sort of insurance running backs. Again, these are guys that you're more stashing them, right? You mentioned Derrick Henry. Dontrell Hilliard is somebody that if I had Derrick Henry as my lead running back, I'd want Dontrell Hilliard on my team. Same with Leonard Fournette. If I had Uncle Lenny, I would want Rachaad White, who's getting more and more work, right? He's had 7 or more touches now in 5 straight games. He's involved in the passing game, 3 or more receptions in 4 of those games for Rachaad White. They like him a lot in Tampa Bay. He's earned Tom's trust as well. And so the Buccaneers, who have, hopefully they've figured some stuff out, right? They're coming up the mini-bye. They had the Thursday night game last week. They're home to the Rams this week, then Seattle, at Cleveland, at New Orleans. Not a great schedule, but not one that scares you. And also, by the way, the kind of schedule where you could see some passing game usage as well. Again, he's a deeper flex play, but also would immediately become a top 10 running back if anything happened to Leonard Fournette.
Yep. Let's jump to America's new nightmare, the Baltimore Ravens backfield. Wow, and let's talk about Kenyon Drake, who's a popular discussion in our weekly waiver wire running back segment. John Harbaugh said that Gus Edwards, he has a hamstring injury, so he'll be day-to-day, probably. We'll see about the Monday night game. He'll have a chance. So what are you doing with Kenyon Drake?
Yeah, and that's the Monday night game. That's the problem is you may not have an indication as to whether or not Gus Edwards is going to play. But if I needed a running back for this week, I think Kenyon Drake is probably the guy, right? He's had at least 11 touches in 3 straight games. He's scored a touchdown in 2 of those. He's had over 65 yards in 2 of those games here. Gus Edwards either won't be active or maybe less than 100% here. They like Kenyon Drake. And the Saints, the Saints are giving up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing running backs in terms of, not the 9th most. They're giving up the 7th most rushing yards per game to opposing running backs. I'm looking at my notes a little bit wrong here, so I apologize there. But the fact is it's not a scary matchup here for Kenyon Drake. I'm not the biggest Kenyon Drake guy, but if you need somebody on a good offense that's going to get a decent amount of touches this week, Kenyon Drake, who's available in almost 70% of Yahoo leagues, I think is your guy for this week.
Kenyon Drake is like a really wealthy man's Marlon Mack, where he's doing the circuit, but he's actually vaguely useful.
He's actually playing.
Yeah, he's actually playing, and might be RB1.
I miss my Marlon McIntosh.
Yeah, where are you? Let's move on to Caleb Huntley, who plays the Chargers this week. He's 96% available, Caleb Huntley, coming off a pretty strong game. Cordarrelle Patterson is still on IR. Arthur Smith yesterday said he expects an update around that on Wednesday, tomorrow. But is Caleb Huntley the guy you want in Atlanta over Tyler Algier?
I still think you prefer Algier, but there's no question that Huntley's getting work. It is a running back by committee on a very run-heavy team. He's now had 16 carries in 2 of the last 3 games, 16 for 91 last week in the game against Carolina. Playing the Chargers this week, who allow 6.1 yards per carry to opposing running backs. And so if Cordarrelle Patterson does not get activated off the IR, he is eligible to return this week. We'll see, as you mentioned, Arthur Smith will give us an update later this week. By the way, if somehow somebody dropped Cordarrelle Patterson, worth checking in your league to see if somebody did. Obviously grab and stash him for whenever he comes back. But if Patterson is out for 1 more week, and I assume Algier is already rostered in your league, Caleb Huntley, who's available in 96% of Yahoo leagues, could be flex usable this week against the Chargers.
Yep. All right, let's jump to Latavius Murray, who is on bye this week, so more of a longer-term outlook. But Latavius Murray in London had 14 carries, 46 yards, gets the touchdown, out-rushes Melvin Gordon 14-9. So Latavius Murray,
running back.
Yeah, he should just be owned in every league as well. He's a flex guy.
Yeah, 1,000%. He just looks better, I think, than Melvin Gordon here. Mike Boone on IR, so it really is a 2-headed monster. To your point, they are on a bye this week. You can't use them, and then they come back to play Tennessee, like a really good run defense. But after that, Vegas and Carolina, so you like those matchups as well. Every game that he's played with the Denver Broncos, he's had at least 15 touches or a score. So they are using him in short yardage situations, and I thought, he looks better than Melvin Gordon. If you're looking for just sort of, again, we say this every week, but like you saw it this past week with Tony Pollard, right? We saw it with Deontay Foreman as well. Like these stash candidates, these backup running backs that we think are good, and then we know would get the run if anything happened to the running back in front of them, whether whether they're traded, whether they're hurt, what have you. But Alexander Mattison, who, when he starts for Dalvin Cook, he got 4 games like that last year, 21.7 fantasy points. Madison should be rostered because Dalvin Cook's rostered. Dalvin Cook has never played every game in an NFL season in his career. How about James Cook? Clearly seems like Cook has distanced himself from Zach Moss as the Devin Singletary backup as well. And, of course, Dearness Johnson, as we mentioned earlier in the show. If Kareem Hunt gets dealt, I think that's one of the reasons why you saw some Dearness Johnson last night.
Yep, just quickly, I'd add Dontrell Hilliard if he's available. Derrick Henry is running it 32 times a game. Like, it's absurd. And the more you run it, the more chance you do have to get hurt. All right, potential drops, Elijah Mitchell, Chase Edmonds.
Yeah, I mean, both guys. I mean, again, Elijah Mitchell, he's hurt, and when he comes back, he's merely going to be insurance for Christian McCaffrey. So there, and Chase Edmonds, right, hasn't had more than 7 touches in a game since week number 1. Played under 30% of the snaps in 4 of the last 5 games. He's just not a part of this Dolphins offense. So yeah, by the way, when we get back, breaking news, Adam Schefter just tweeting this out, the Lions are trading TJ Hockenson to the Vikings. Wow. So breaking news there, Hawk, now a member of Minnesota, just in time to face my Commanders. Great, of course. Fantastic. We will break that down along with more waivers when we return on Fantasy Football Happy Hour.
But I do think Foreman is very clearly the best running back in Carolina, and I guess I'm banking on him eventually taking over the primary running back role. That's why I want him over Gus Edwards. Candy ranking, I don't want to waste people's time here. I'm sure folks, I could do that on Twitter and get roasted for it, but obviously $100,000 is at the top of the list.
After our show, if you want more rock-solid waiver wire advice, but maybe some questionable food takes from Denny Carter wearing a tie,
all true,
head to our YouTube page at youtube.com/NFL on NBC. RotoWorld's Denny Carter is doing a live fantasy Q&A session at 1 p.m. Eastern, taking a ton of questions. Let's talk about TJ Hockenson. He's got traded to the Vikings. He's been tight end 4 on the season, but does this give him even more upside?
I don't know that it does. I will say that I think because what's more upside, right? I mean,
tight end 3,
right? I mean, I guess, right? I mean, he's clearly a locked-in tight end starter for you. I think he's going to a better quarterback in Kirk Cousins, who, by the way, so far this season, 19% target share, 2 opposing tight ends, right? Irv Smith now has this high ankle sprain. He's out for multiple weeks. So I think you clearly can drop Irv Smith, except like in a deep, dynasty league. But in redraft leagues, he's going to be out, and when he comes back, he's going to be backing up TJ Hockenson, who's, obviously a real talent here. So but I don't know that he's going to get a massive upgrade just because the Lions were throwing a ton, and Hawkinson's still got to compete with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen for touchdown targets, for red zone targets. I weirdly think this is about the same. It doesn't improve his value. He's not leaping over Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce in the tight end rankings. He's, in that next tier of elite fantasy tight ends. I do think this is pretty interesting on the Lions side of the ball. I don't think there's a tight end for the Lions that you're immediately rushing out to pick up. But I do think, for Amon-Ra St. Brown, who also, in terms of the middle of the field, we could see Amon-Ra return to sun god status, had a quiet day by his standards against the Dolphins this past week as well. So, I think this is a good move for the Vikings, and it's a great move, by the way, for Kirk Cousins, who's been what he normally is. Kirk Cousins, top 12 quarterback, right? It is a solid streaming low-end QB1. I think this raises his floor too.
Yeah, maybe even good for Justin Jefferson as well, a bit less attention on him. The thing with the Lions, who are not a good team, and usually when a player goes to a better team, you're thinking it's going to increase their fantasy value. Well, Detroit projected as a perfectly fine offense going forward. That's not the problem. It's their defense. And so I think Hockenson probably gets less usage, maybe a little bit more touchdown potential, just playing in a slightly better better offense, but yeah, it seems like it's going to be much the same.
Yeah, but obviously a big new, big new toy for Kirk Cousins. I think that helps him, and I think it certainly narrows the target tree in Detroit. We'll see when it's going to be a while before we see Jameson Williams. So I think Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think hopefully we get more touches for DeAndre Swift. I think you'll see both running backs get involved here as well, and whatever. Josh Reynolds continues to have
Josh Reynolds
type. Josh Reynolds
like
can't
Michael Myers.
Him and Khalif Raymond. Right,
Yeah.
getting in deeper leagues, going to have deep league value. Okay, so that's TJ Hockenson. We will see trade deadline all the way up until 4 o'clock. Follow me and Jay on Twitter as we will react to these as it comes out after the show, at Matthew Berry TMR, at Croucher JD on the Twitter. All right, Jay, what are we doing now?
Let's jump into waivers for wide receivers. Who are your top 2 favorite pickups this week?
I mean, I think there's a clear-cut favorite here. First off, Rondale Moore to me, right? Rondale Moore, if you sort of look at the most added on Yahoo, like he's already been there. He's been added in, over 4,000 leagues. By the way, and waivers haven't run, so that's just in what leagues that have, weird systems or whatever. But Rondale Moore, who's available in 65% of Yahoo leagues, to me is really interesting. 7 for 92 and the touchdown on 8 targets last week as well. He's had at least 8 targets. He's had at least 6 receptions in 3 of the last 4 games. We talked about this on Fantasy Football pregame. We've talked about him a lot, that once Robbie Anderson got more snaps and they were able to play Rondale Moore inside more, with Hopkins obviously on the other side, that would benefit Rondale Moore, who's a player they really like, but needs to be in the slot to be effective. 53% of his routes this past week came from the slot, up from just 17% the week before. I think full steam ahead. Nice schedule coming up here as well. Seattle, Rams, Niners, Chargers. A lot of those teams you can play. A lot of those teams you expect Arizona to have to throw against, and certainly none of them are elite slot defending teams.
Yep. Dwayne McFarland had a great tweet on Rondale Moore saying that he's participated in 95% of routes, as you say in America, over the last 4 games. 8+ targets in 3 out of 4 games. And the Cardinals are terrible. That's a terrible team at the moment, and they're going to be throwing a lot. And with DeAndre Hopkins apparently just being back to peak DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to get the best corner for teams that shadow. So huge upside with Rondale Moore. And so he slightly edges Josh Palmer.
He does. And you're like, why are we picking up Josh Palmer? Well, because Austin Eckler told us so.
If I'm looking at our roster, just looking at the past of what's happened, Josh has been playing a part in our role, or in our game. But I feel like he more so plays that Mike Williams spot. If you pay attention to anything that's going on with the Chargers, and so now that Keenan's back, Josh is going to be back on the outside for us, running down the field. And we'll have Keenan back in the short intermediate, doing his thing, man on man. And so I'm picking up Josh Palmer if I can. If he's out there, I'm picking him up.
There you go, fantasy football analyst and star running back.
RB1.
Friend of the show.
Analyst 1.
Analyst 1, RB1, friend of the podcast, Austin Eckler there. That was the definitive Austin Eckler interview that we did right here on Fantasy Football Happy Hour last Friday. You can go check that out wherever you get your podcast or on the new NFL and NBC YouTube channel, where clips are always on demand as well. Josh Palmer has had 6 or more targets in 4 of the last 5 games, and so as you just heard, he's going to play the Mike Williams role. We know Mike Williams is going to be out multiple weeks now with his high ankle sprain, and so Josh Palmer, who's had 7 career games with at least 6 targets, he scored at least 13 fantasy points in 6 of those 7 games. We expect him to get 6 or more targets here, filling in for Mike Williams in a high passing volume offense. He's available in 75% of ESPN or Yahoo leagues. He's that too. Whatever. I spent 15 years saying ESPN leagues. So, it is what it is. But he's for those, a lot of people play on ESPN too. He's available in 75% or probably around that on ESPN as well.
Okay,
that's the top 2 tier.
That's tier 1. Let's look at the rest of the most added and dropped wide receivers on Yahoo.
Okay.
And what names jump out to you here outside of Rondale Moore and Josh Palmer?
I don't understand why people are dropping Wan'Dale Robinson. I know it was a bad game this past week, but I'm hanging tough. With Wan'Dale Robinson. I know he's on a bye this week, but I guess I'm sort of hanging tough with him. Listen, in terms of drops, makes sense with Goodwin now that Metcalf is back. I hear you with Sammy Watkins. I don't know why anyone picked up Sammy Watkins only to drop him. Two that sort of jump out to me is like, really, guys, is Rashad Bateman and George Pickens. Like, again, if I need the roster spot and I need to win now, I get it because Bateman's going to be out multiple weeks here with his injury. But I do think there's upside in terms of his talent and the quarterback. Same with George Pickens. We've seen the upside of George Pickens as well, and I get it. Certainly wasn't a great game this past week, and he's on a bye this week. But I do think if you have the roster spot, I think the upside of Robinson, Bateman, Pickens is worth stashing and holding on to if you can. On the other side, in terms of the added names there, a couple of interesting names. Obviously, Rondale Moore and Josh Palmer we already talked about here. How about, Darnell Mooney? Obviously, he's not available in 50% of Yahoo leagues, so he's not on our sort of list. But if he is still out there in your league, he should be rostered in, a lot of leagues. The Justin Fields and the Bears offense has figured out how to be competent. The other name that sort of jumps out to me in terms of the added is, how about Garrett Wilson?
Yep, 6 receptions, 7 targets, 115 yards against the Patriots, one of the lone bright spots. It looks like if Zach Wilson, obviously he's going to throw a lot to the other team too, but if he's throwing to his team, Garrett Wilson's clearly the wide receiver that you want.
Team high 20% target share from Zach Wilson so far this year. He looks at Garrett Wilson like he's a neighborhood mom. You know what I mean? Like he wants to kind of zero in on Garrett Wilson. Meanwhile, Elijah Moore is just like,
he's a neighborhood dad.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what he is. He's not interested at all. Like, he's just right. Exactly. He's, I love the quote from Elijah Moore. Like, what's your chemistry like with, with Zach Wilson? I don't know. I never got the ball.
That was hilarious.
Freaking amazing. We will see if Elijah Moore gets dealt by 4 o'clock today. But, they're designing runs for Garrett Wilson as well. So, talented player who's getting a lot of targets. That's somebody who needs to be rostered in more leagues. He's available in 52% of the leagues as well.
Any interest in Romeo Doubs? Little renaissance for Romeo Doubs. He had maybe the best catch of the entire weekend with that catch against Buffalo, the touchdown with the deep ball from Rodgers. Any hope that he's still could be the guy for Green Bay?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see about Allen Lazard, but they're playing Detroit this week, so you like that matchup quite a bit as well. He's got an 18% target share so far this season, and in games, there's 4 of them. In games which he's gotten at least 6 targets, he's averaging over 14 fantasy points per game. 57% of the Packers' air yards on Sunday night came via Romeo Doubs. And yes, that catch only helps increase the confidence that Aaron Rodgers has in Romeo Doubs. So sort of interesting there. And you know what, I mentioned this earlier in the show, but Donovan Peoples-Jones now has at least 70 receiving yards in 4 of the last 5 games. He's a deep threat on a team that's going to get Deshaun Watson back as its quarterback here. And so on a bye this week, again, you'd have to be in a little bit more of a deeper league for DPG, but DPJ, I'm having trouble speaking today. Not my day. Today is not my day. He's, Donovan Peoples-Jones is somebody that I think is under a lot of people's radar as well. You know who's had a kind of a renaissance?
Yes, who's had a renaissance?
Under P.J. Walker?
Yeah, the great Terrace Marshall Jr.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he did a bit of work against the Falcons. Obviously, DJ Moore is the big story, but Terrace Marshall Jr. went a bit under the radar. He's available in 99% of leagues, so he's worthwhile.
He got 9 targets, in this game. 447. He's playing nearly 90% of the snaps in the 2 games in which P.J. Walker has been under center. So, yeah, this is somebody that was a second-round pick, not that long ago for the Carolina Panthers. Had a tough year last year in Carolina, but who among us did not, right? I mean, like the Panthers as a whole. And so new head coach, new quarterback, maybe Ben McAdoo not under Matt Rule's rule.
Yes.
It's
a good one.
What are you gonna do? My point is
it's not a wasteland anymore in Carolina.
No,
not necessarily.
No,
P.J.
it is
Walker's
not.
throwing the ball 70 yards through the air into the end zone.
They should have won that game.
They really should have won that game.
I feel so bad for them. And by the way, I don't know if anyone's been talking about this. DJ Moore did not take off his helmet in the field of play.
Yeah.
He was out of the end zone. The rule says in the field, I believe. You know what I mean? Like the NFL, I know the NFL clarified that it still counts, but it shouldn't.
It shouldn't. And
it's a dumb rule.
Yeah. As someone holding a 20-1 Panthers NFC South ticket, I certainly agree with your interpretation of the rule. One name that we didn't talk about who was on the most dropped list on Yahoo was Hunter Renfrow. Is he ready to? I mean, it seems remarkable after the year that he had last year, but is he just dumpsville now?
For me, he is. He's had one game this year. He's had one game, Jay, where he's had double-digit fantasy points, right? He's had under 30 yards in 3 of 5 games so far this year. And the Raiders are either running heavy with Josh Jacobs or just not doing anything at all. I mean, Derek Carr looked awful. I mean, somehow Derek Carr managed to sink Devontae Adams' fantasy value against a banged-up Saints secondary this past weekend. So, Devontae Adams didn't do in a game in which the Raiders were trailing significantly, and there was no Darren Waller, and Devontae Adams isn't doing anything. Hunter Renfrow still can't do anything, amazing.
Yeah,
he had 1.6 fantasy points in Week 8. What are we waiting for?
Yeah, they did not cross midfield until 3.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. The Raiders' offense.
It's a disaster.
Remarkable. Okay, we're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to talk quarterbacks. And we're going to have Andy Reid weigh in on candy and costumes.
Okay.
Have like a costume maybe growing up that you remember? I know you were a big kid, and then maybe some candy that's your favorite one. It's Halloween for it.
Yeah. So listen, I've got 2 favorite candies for sure. Peanut coated M&Ms. I mean, I love those peanut M&Ms actually, and then Mr. Goodbar. It seems like every time I walk by Mr. Goodbar, he calls me, and says, "Andy, come eat me." And so I very seldom pass those up. The costume that I remember most is probably a Batman costume, which as a portly kid, that was probably not a good look, but I felt like it was. I felt like I could fly.
Andy Reid as Batman, probably not of the Christian Bale variety.
No, probably not. Probably like kind of, trade show Adam West, version, sort of Comic-Con Adam West version of
could say that.
Remember 25 years ago when I was Batman, he's a little, probably more.
Exactly. Maybe that's in Andy Reid's future if you get sick of winning Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes. Let's talk about some quarterbacks.
Sure.
Available on the waiver wire.
Yeah, no Dak Prescott this week. Again, it is Buy-Mageddon, so it's not a bad week, but if you've been using Daniel Jones, no Dak Prescott this week as well. Russell Wilson and Jimmy Garoppolo both out, as is Jacoby Brissett and Kenny Pickett. So, it's a pretty good bye week for quarterbacks, generally speaking, because most of those guys, other than Dak, you're not really using. Daniel Jones maybe, but if you need a quarterback, we have some options for you. And somehow, I don't understand this because I feel like we keep talking about him every single week, but somehow Justin Fields is still available in almost 60% of Yahoo leagues. He's on the season. He's the 11th best quarterback in fantasy so far. He's coming off of a game against the Cowboys, a really good Cowboys defense, where he finished as QB3. Like, the rushing is so real, Jay.
Yeah, I don't understand that at all. I would project him as a borderline top 10 quarterback going forward. Like, right now he's behind Trevor Lawrence, Daniel Jones, Marcus Mariota in terms of his ranking on the season. I think that he'll probably jump all of those guys because he's 11th and trending in the right direction. And if you look at the stats, the more designed runs, that's really inflating his fantasy value. And just watch him play. He just looks like a completely different player to who he was in the first 3 games. As we look at some of his splits, first 3 games versus last 5 games, and the fantasy points have skyrocketed from 9.3 in the first 3 games to 19 per game in the last 5, and he's just doing it across the board. The passing is up from 99 yards per game to 180, throwing more touchdowns, and he's more than doubled his rushing yards per game.
He's had 4 straight weeks as a top 12 fantasy quarterback, 3 straight games with over 60 rushing yards and over 18 fantasy points as well, to your point. There seems to have been a light switch go on with him, and so the fact that they're using him on more designed runs, the fact that he is more confident as a passer, the fact that the Bears trading away Roquan Smith, and you're like, well, why do we care about a linebacker? Well, their defense is going to be worse. That is not a move that helps your defense if you're the Chicago Bears. And so it means like they'll be in more game scripts like they were on Sunday against the Cowboys, where, hey, we've got to start throwing, we've got to start generating offense as well. So, yeah, Justin Fields should be rostered in a lot more leagues. I think he's a viable QB1 the rest of the way. He's available in 60% of Yahoo leagues. Speaking of quarterbacks that it's not always pretty, but because of the rushing, they have a high floor and they are fantasy viable. Marcus Mariota, who plays the Chargers this week, right? Last week, on the season, QB11, QB7 last week as well. He's had more than 17 points in 3 or 4 games. He's had at least 40 yards rushing in all those games, Jay. And here was crazy. He threw the ball 28 times.
Unbelievable. I mean, they were down for periods, but still to get the 28 passing attempts, 3 passing touchdowns, which is the most that he's had all season, and he still gets the 43 rushing yards, which is so key. So Marcus Mariota on the suddenly playoff relevant Atlanta Falcons in sole possession of first place in the NFC South. So I think this is just what Marcus Mariota is going forward. And also, now I think we're at the point where I kept on waiting for him to hear the knock on the door from Desmond Ridder. Sure. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. Like, they're in first place in the division. Yeah, they've got a legit chance to win the division. So, I mean, which is insane, but like if they were 2-6, then they would. If they were 2-6, then maybe it's Desmond Ridder. Let's see what the kid has. But you're right. I mean, they're right in the thick of getting a playoff win here. Let's talk about another guy in the playoff mix. All of a sudden, much to my chagrin, hail the Commanders, Taylor Heinicke, the 4-4. They're tied for the last wild card spot with the 49ers. I mean, look, they got the same record as the 49ers, which is insane. But guess what? You think about this, the Minnesota Vikings, they play the Commanders this week, and what they do? They're like, we're nervous. We got to go give up we got to go get TJ Hockenson. We got to give up a bunch of picks because we're nervous. They're nervous about the Commanders. They're very nervous about the Commanders here. He's had 2 starts this year. Taylor Heinicke is. He's averaging over 18 fantasy points per game. He's had over 30 pass attempts per game. They're running the same offense. This is an offense that under Carson Wentz was top 10, borderline top 5 in terms of pass attempts. Like, it's going to be a pass-heavy offense. It's going to be an aggressive down-the-field offense as well. And so Heinicke, who's got a little bit of wiggle to him, a little bit of rushing upside as well, 29 rushing yards and a touchdown last week as well. I think he is a viable streamer this week against a Vikings defense that struggles. When we come back, more tight end talk. There you go, tight end waivers when we return on Fantasy Football Happy Hour. All right, a reminder to download the Roto World app to receive breaking player news and injury updates delivered right to your phone. And also, we didn't cover defenses in today's show, but if you're looking for defense special team streamers, check out Gary Davenport's Getting Defensive article on rotoworld.com. Right. Let's talk.
And Denny Carter does his waiver wire show on YouTube. You can check that out. Denny does a great job as well, our friend Denny Carter. You can follow him on Twitter at CDCarter13. We're always supposed to do a Denny Carter promo, and then we always run long, and it always gets bumped. And that's why you saw the clip of Denny earlier in the show. But just don't want to give – now we've given him 2, which means we can blow him off next week. We're good. All right, there you go.
See you in 2023, Denny Carter.
Thank you, exactly,
Let's
Denny
jump
Carter.
into waiver wire tight ends, and let's start off with Greg Dulcich, who's on a bye this week, but given what he's done, I think he needs to be rostered everywhere.
Every week that he's played since he returned, he's been a top 12 fantasy tight end. He's averaging over 60 yards in 3 games since he came off the IR with a 18% target share, Jay, and just an athletic guy that I know they like a lot in Denver.
Just a body as well who can do stuff in the Denver offense.
Right, and we're looking for guys like that because they don't have many.
No,
they don't have many. So, yeah, Greg Dulcich, let's ride.
Yep.
He would be the number 1 guy. But, again, if you need somebody this week, he's not going to play because the Broncos are on a bye.
So is Evan Engram. Is he the guy who's had 6 targets his past 4 games and had a great fantasy game against the Broncos in London?
He's had a 20% target share better in 3 of the last 4 games. He's the 7th best tight end in fantasy on a points per game basis over the last month as well. So, yeah, it does seem to be developing a connection with Trevor Lawrence. We talked about this in the preseason. Engram was on one of those deep sleeper lists for me because it's just like, again, if you look at what Peterson has done as a head coach when he was with the Eagles, a lot of Zach Ertz, a lot of Dallas Goedert. So, yes, Evan Engram is getting a bunch of love from the Jacksonville Jaguars. One last one here for me, and that's Isiah Likely, who you know I love. Like, this is a guy we talked about all preseason, and finally he looked like that guy filling in for Mark Andrews. We don't know if Mark Andrews is going to play. It sounds like he avoided serious injury, but there's a chance Isiah Likely plays this week and Andrews sits because the Ravens are on a bye next week. So Likely, who did 6 for 77 and a touchdown on 8 targets, filling in for Andrews last year. You know what? I mean, yeah, give me some Isaiah Lovely.
Some Isaiah Lovely, yeah. Mark Andrews is definitely out there. Likely as a guy you probably definitely want to start as a tight end 1, pretty much. I mean, 6 for 77 with a touchdown.
He would make the love list if Andrew was out, but just we've seen the upside. He's already rostered in every dynasty league as well. He should be, but
could also provide some value if Mark Andrews is still there as well.
Yeah. I mean, like, this is an emergent. Like, again, Rachaad Bateman's out for the next couple of weeks. They're looking for pass catchers to emerge. I don't know that how Likely, I don't know how you can ignore what Likely did last week as well. Finally, James Mitchell, if you're picking up if you're in a super deep league and you're looking for somebody, I think James Mitchell will be the guy for the Lions as well. So that's a guy, certainly in tight end premium leagues, he's worth a flyer. All right, it's closing time. So listen, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So for Jay Croucher, I'm Matthew Berry. Good luck on waivers tonight. We're back right here tomorrow at noon on Peacock. Thanks so much for tuning in. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.